That was exciting to watch. Proud of it.
That's neat.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. If you would please stand for the invocation, and please remain standing for the pledge. Doug, will you lead us in prayer?
Well, if you'll bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful community that we live in. We pray that as councilmen, that you'll help us to make decisions that are long-time benefits for those people that we serve. Guide us in your way, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item is the approval of the minutes of the May 4th regular and the minutes of the May 7th special call meeting. Do you see these in your agenda? I have a motion for approval.
So forward.
Motion to hear second.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
All right, next is the adoption of the agenda. Any additions or anything need to be added or taken off? Hearing none, I hear a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
All right, next item, city attorney's report.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
All right, city clerk's report.
Nothing at this time.
Anything from our city engineer?
No, sir, but I do have the paving information. We'll cover that.
All right, so we move to the city manager's report, and that is the first item on the city manager.
First item for council's consideration is approval of 2021 T-SPLOST paving list. You should have received a PDF file attached with your packet headed G1. There was also a subsequent Excel file that was emailed so that you can see all of the data. And this is supposed to be a snapshot of the overall recommendation based on council's criteria. So you have 3 columns here, and we'll move from left to right. Each column segregated by funding cycle, 2021 through 2023. First segment on your far left is what was presented at the previous council meeting, so that will be the constant. All right, the 2 other columns to your right were weighted averages based on not segmenting roads, the first of which was the 55-30 basis point priority separated from asphalt integrity at 55% and 30% tied to traffic. The column to your far right was segmented by 55% asphalt integrity and a 45% traffic score for the matrix. As you can see, not most of the roads changed, and the priority of eliminating segmentation, basically there are no new roads to be proposed in 2021, as all of the money is spent in both of the columns to the right on finishing up segmented roads over the past 2 years. So if moving away from segmentation is council's priority, the choice would either be between reallocating traffic count from 30% to 45, or to leave the asphalt integrity and the traffic rating as it was at 30%. Both of these methodologies remove the 15 percentage points that were assigned to council members. There again, you can kind of do a comparative from the column on the left to the columns on the right as far as the segments of roads that would be dropped if we so choose to move forward with non-segmenting roads and cleaning up what has already been paved to finish those roads out.
So what we need is a motion from someone on which way we want to do it.
You know, I think we can build it however council wants. We just want to understand which methodology your preference is. And what we took away, and Trey and I spent a good deal of time, we thought that the removal of road segments was one of council's priorities. But as you can see, even by changing the percentage allocation on the traffic, it doesn't change it, and all your money goes to finishing up road segments in 2021.
And what doesn't get done, I know we're not completing the whole road and making it look like a nice, complete whole road, but what doesn't get done is some of the worst problems you got that would have moved some of these other roads up there, right?
Correct. So the far left is your worst places.
Right.
Some of that segmentation, but if we want to move away from segmentation, you've got longer stretches,
Yeah.
so you do fewer roads, and those are represented in the two columns on the right.
Some of which would be going over segments that were in pretty decent shape as compared to that road.
Could be. So I guess what I'm looking for is a pass, fail. If there's a different scenario or a different matrix or a different point of data we want to look at, we can certainly, run those numbers. And I think the level of detail is probably much greater in the Excel file that we sent over. You can actually see all the streets, over the 5 years.
And we're kind of looking at reassessing it after this paving season, like the ratings.
Correct. And I think Trey recommended at least every 5 years, but then moving forward, we would deploy a different type of technology in the rating criteria. I think there was some cool stuff they're doing with camera applications to cars that ties back into your GIS system, where everything was visual inspection and paper on the first go round.
Well, I make a motion we adopt this new methodology of paving roads.
Which one?
New methodology,
There's more than
new
one.
system.
There's more than one.
No, we're going to proceed with a reassessment technology, but that wouldn't be tied necessarily to this year's paving priority, because there's going to be some lead time on getting a consultant in to provide the reassessment. And if we were waiting to pay based off the reassessment, we're going to miss warm weather, and we're going to push it into next spring.
What we need to decide is which one of these, A, B, or C.
I don't think it makes much difference in 21, either one that you do. Because it's the same roads priority.
Well, if you go the original presentation, there's a whole lot more segments that get paid versus if we
Right,
clean
but
up the segments.
Yeah, but I think we all can agree that we were getting away from the segmentation and doing the entire road rather than cutting it up. So if that's the
Yes.
if that's the methodology, it really does. It's moot
And does everybody
in 21
feel,
as far as what gets done. On
No,
the-
it's not change. If we clean up the segments, it's not. It's not going to change.
So those-
there are some changes as you get down in here
Exactly.
with a couple.
But
of
we'll come back because to your point, we've got to go ahead and take advantage of the warm weather and get these done, and we'll come back right on for 22.
Right. Let's say, case in point, Ms. Reeves, we've talked about South Bethel with a curb and gutter, right? In the original presentation, that was in. We moved to elimination of segmentation, that's out.
and we move to next year?
So we're doing the whole road.
You're
whatever road
going
we
back
do.
and picking up everything that's been chopped up over the last 2 years.
Okay, so would South Bethel be done this year?
No.
It would not,
We move to next year.
but that was, so I guess curb and gutter is the same as paving.
Well, you have to widen the street.
And I saw that pastor yesterday. and he was asking.
Well, I
had
just-
told him, you know.
I just want you to understand the implications. Like, if we move away from segments, we're gonna do longer runs, but we're gonna do fewer streets.
You didn't want, with Triune Mill, when we said, why didn't we just finish the whole street?
Right.
We were gonna take it a street at a time, rather than saying, okay, we're gonna take 3/4 of that, 20% of this street.
And so we'll finish Triune Mill, we'll finish Eastleigh, instead of segmenting, we'll go ahead and do the entire.
I think we finished Triune Mill, didn't we?
No.
We didn't finish? That's right, we went and finished
Yeah,
Jessup.
South Main.
Yeah, but Triune Mill would be on the 20, because
Yeah.
it's part of a segment,
That's
so
right.
we're going back, but
So now, back to South Bethel, you say that would be done in 2022?
Yeah, it's Hannah's Mill, 4th Avenue, Davis Street, South Bethel.
Yeah, but I mean, we went and we talked about that, and we told that pastor we were gonna do that curb and gutter this year. And now because of the fact we're going to change the way we're doing this, it won't get done.
Correct.
Yeah, that was based on our original thing.
And I'm gonna have to ask him the question, but I mean, technically, you could add Hannah's Mill to the 2021, because it could be considered a segment too.
So you're saying over here on South Bethel, you weren't looking at completing that entire road, you were just doing that little section where it needed curb and gutter?
Yep. The section rated high enough under the old criteria for that portion that hit out where the curb and gutter needed to be brought down.
So does everybody still feel strongly about moving away from the segments and doing the complete roads? Because it does have an impact on obviously some things like Ms. Lakeith thought were gonna be done. Now it's not.
And I guess technically, you saying South Bethel's gonna be next year, but if it gets reassessed, it could actually be different too, right? I mean, you're not saying most definitely it's gonna be done next,
Based on
based on
data.
this data, but like I said, if you rescored it, it's not as bad as it seemed like. It could actually fall down even another year or so. I mean, with the new data, that could happen. I hate to say, yeah, it's gonna be done next year, and then come next year, you realize with the new data, it gets put back.
So if we weren't changing the way we were doing it, it would be done this year?
Yes.
But we would be going back to the segment, doing it by segments.
South Bethel would be paved from East Lee Street to Mallory, and from Mallory to Allen.
From East Lee to Mallory. And, this street, when we talking South Bethel, that's on across Mallory Street.
Is there a motion of how to do this? I would assume A, B, or C? With B and C kind of being the same.
There's a motion on the table.
He made a motion to
No.
reassess the roads,
Yeah.
Okay.
but that's what we've already said we're doing that, so.
Mhm.
We need to amend that motion or table
I
that
guess you need
motion.
to-
or-
You did make a motion, do you withdraw that motion, table it, what?
Okay, we can withdraw that motion, but does that put us back in segmentation?
No, I think we're trying to decide that now.
That's what we're trying to, what you decided was, you said we need to reassess the roads.
Okay,
That's which we're gonna do anyway.
we'll reassess.
What we're needing to know tonight is a motion for A, keep it segmented and do these, or B or C, which are both doing the whole thing and just a different percentage, which ends up this year not really changing much different.
in the end, when you stick with the segmentation, and I know we all sort of agreed last week, 2 weeks ago, that it looks better when you complete a whole road, but segmentation does take care of the greatest needs that you have, which is where those two pieces of South Bethel fell into.
And it might be where after that, after you go through a couple years of the segmentation, you're getting where the worst has been done, and then you go back to doing it all.
You would
would-
hope that would happen.
You would,
Like you
but
said,
you don't,
that new, more advanced thing may change a lot.
it could.
So far as this year, if we're looking at segmentation, then what are the roads that will be paved this year?
Everything on the far left column under 2021.
Which include the two segments of South Bethel.
I can see both sides of it. I can see trying to hit the worst stuff, and fixing it, but I also think, you're right there, especially if it's that close from one year to another. Now, I can understand if you're 6 years down the road paving one section, it probably doesn't make sense to pave all of it. So I don't know. Which may be corrected a little bit more when we reassess it. That might figure in differently.
Well, I thought that was the basis of our disagreement last time, because we were segmenting roads, which Eastleigh Street and Tryon Mill Road were in my district and also in Keith's district, and they were just segmented, which did not take care of the entire problem. So that was, the issue when we first had the roads paved and segmented, then bad weather came in. So that's why my motion was for full paving of the entire road.
I would anticipate that the work crew could move faster if they're not moving from location to location.
That's right, that's right. You got the equipment there. Let's go ahead and do this entire road so we don't have to move the equipment 3 or 4 times.
And Russell, just for clarification, when you looked at the whole road, it changed,
There's a weighted
it
average.
changed that weighting to a weighted average, so
we gave-
roads drifted up.
Right, we had a column, and I think it's in the Excel spreadsheet, where we ran another scenario to where if one segment on your road scored really bad, that was the score that stuck. But we looked at it and said that the weighted average of the entire road was, from a data standpoint, probably the best metric to rate it.
Yeah.
Because you could have a really long road, 90% of it's good, and one section scores really, really, really bad, it would kick up to really bad. And if you're paving the whole stretch, you may pave a long section that didn't necessarily need it. So we weighted the score.
So that's how Eastleigh goes in the first group, from 69 toward the bottom to all the way up to second place with the weighted average.
Yes, well, but irregardless of weighted average, with the impetus being on remediation of segmentation, those roads were placed first. See where it says not scored, continue for 2020? So what I had them do is pull everything that we've chopped up, and that gets done first, so we get out of cutting roads up.
But there was a method to having it segmented when they did it the first time.
Right. So they did an assessment based on not linear foot, but by intersection. There was a methodology to the asphalt integrity study, however many feet. So they assigned different segments based on the asphalt integrity. So you could go down a road, and one segment's going to be really good, one segment's okay, and one segment's really good, and then one segment's really bad. So when we put it in the prioritization, we prioritized it by segment. We didn't do a weighted score for the whole road. That's what we just did when we weighted the entire road.
Russell, feel like you and Trey kind of favored the segmentation. It was the conversation that we had last that moved it toward the weighted average to finish whole segments. After having done that, what's your feel in looking at it after?
No, from an engineering standpoint, a pragmatic approach, segmentation directs your resources towards the most critical issue. But that might not be the most politically feasible method because citizens don't understand why you just paved from point A to point B and you omitted C, D, E, and F.
And they'll think that doesn't look good to have.
Or that Jeff lives this part, or some people think it's that kind of. In some places though, it
Not like we did on West County Road.
Yep.
Yeah.
some places to me it makes sense to do the whole thing, and sometimes it makes more sense to do a segment. I mean, it's almost like it's just like a blended kind of thing.
But the problem with doing that is you can't make those decisions on the run because we got to vote ahead of time.
Exactly.
That's the priority.
Do I hear motion of how to do it?
Yeah. Again, based on the two issues we ran into on South Main and on Triune Mill, I thought that was the impetus for not segmenting anymore, just because of, and there's a lot of discussion on that, so unless something's changed, I think it just looks better in the community to me. And again, it's a trade-off. You're not getting the parts that actually need it, but at least you're completing the whole segments of road, and it definitely looks better in the community, I think, to have a full paved road, whichever one you're doing, to me. And I think if we want to just finish out 21, I mean, not much, well, obviously, I don't know what the conversation was in regards to Bethel, what a part of that, but I guess some of it's getting done in 21, correct? 0.62 mile of?
It's North Bethel.
Oh, excuse me, well, part of Bethel, yeah.
South Bethel. Whatever.
Right.
And as far as scoring, really, the two new methods delivered exactly the same list of roads
Right.
to be done.
Well, you
Because
really
you're
have to
finishing up
Yeah,
the
you-
2020.
21 is kind of picking up, so you'll have to look at 22 and beyond.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, see, like on 22, the traffic at 30% has 4th Avenue number 2. Well, maybe that's a bad example. Let's see what one changes. See, I see where Davis and Thomas Street invert. Like when you give 45% towards traffic count, Thomas jumps up on the column on the far right, right up under Davis, where it would be 3 streets behind, depending on how you score them.
So what part of South Bethel? I see South Bethel listed here twice under 2021, so what part of South Bethel is that?
From East Lee all the way to Allen Street.
Big example would be like Adams Street would be in 1 year. This one puts it in the other year.
Right. So there is some difference once you get in there, depending upon how much weight you put on traffic count.
So if South Bethel isn't done this year, when is it, would it come on the list to be paid?
Depends on which methodology y'all choose.
Who's on first?
Well, if we go with the methodology of paving the entire road, when would it be paid?
22.
Next year.
22, Russell,
If the new scoring system,
Based on this methodology
Yes.
as
there
presented.
you go, it'd come in 22. But there's a more advanced scoring system that we're
Do
gonna.
they all re-vote next year? Do they get points again and re-vote?
Well, we did away with that.
Okay.
And
On a couple sessions,
You may already wait down today.
It's fine. If council would like to sleep on it, maybe if you would entertain a call meeting so we could get the answer. If you're not prepared to make a motion tonight, if you want additional information or time to think it over.
But we're kind of on a time crunch.
Well, you know, we
Paving a
asked
little-
Trey to back into the numbers because we have to, once we approve the roads, they have to design the spec, we have to order geotech, you know, then we have to put it out the bid, and we have to execute contracts, and we have to execute notice to proceed, then we have to have mobilization, and then we want to try to get in before the weather gets cold.
Is anybody out there feeling like they wanted to move back toward the segment? Because if they don't really feel that way, we might as well go ahead and vote to, because they delivered the two.
For this year, for 2021, it'd be the same if you go. So I guess, yeah, like Doug's saying, the question is, do you want to do segments again, like we've been doing, or do all the road? Which picks up what we hadn't done, what we left off the last couple of years. And that's your main decision tonight. Need it in the form of a motion. Either way.
How many road that we didn't finish, besides Triangle Road? I know, County Road was one off there.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All
Yeah.
all these roads right here,
Plus Hansville.
plus Hansville.
Make a motion, we go for the full road at 5545 for 2021 as a reassess.
Okay, you have a motion, and that's this third one. You say
Yes.
C, or whatever you want to call it. Do I hear a second?
I second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrook.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes, if Russell, if you would promise me, you would get over there on that South Bethel and do something over there on that street for that gentleman a little bit this year.
All y'all have to do is vote to appropriate, let's see here, $78,000.
$78,000 for what?
That finishes out South Bethel.
What? No, I don't mean to finish it out. I mean, if it matter going over there, maybe, you know, filling some potholes or that.
Oh, I
kind of
got you,
thing.
I got you.
Yeah, that's what I
got
mean.
you.
And I just have to tell this to the Reverend tonight, 'cause he ran me down today. But okay.
Councilmember Henry.
Yes.
The next item for discussion is on the 2022 SPLOST. We have a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow, 5 o'clock, is that correct?
6?
6 or 5?
I think
I think it's 5 o'clock, with the county. So
What
Lonnie
time
and
tomorrow?
5. So Lonnie and I have met with the county manager, and it's the same numbers that were presented at the kickoff meeting. The anticipated city share based on the county's original recommendation is 35% allocation to the city, which comes in at $8,183,451.
8 million.
183,451. Now, consider these aren't going to be hard numbers. These are revenue projections based on, you know, previous collections, and I think he used a 1% escalation when he calculated them. Essentially, the 35% of the allocation is a higher percent allocation than the city of Thomaston is currently getting. It does include debt defeasance, which will be bonded by the county to pay off debt, I believe, on the Justice Center is the anticipation. That would be a continual process over future referendums, and in the event the referendum were to fail, it would become general obligation on the county. That's a county issue. City issues 35%, totaling $8 million. I think we're at 25 or 20% now, so it's a little bit of a tick up. There would have to be a true-up provision provided in the intergovernmental agreement, kind of like we did on the T-Splosh. The way the statute works is if you bond based on sales tax, the first collections or the first fruits of that collection goes into the sinking fund to pay off the debt service. Then there's a true-up provision for the remainder of the year. So if 100% of the revenue goes to the bond debt, once that bond debt payment is satisfied, the city would receive higher than 35% until those numbers matched out. And then we put a true up catch-all at the end of the referendum, to where when all the money is sent from the state, we check the percentages and we true up at the end of the deal. So I feel
Yatesville gets their money first.
yeah, in
too.
Yatesville it comes in at 1%, and just like the T-Splosh, if both parties, Yatesville City Council and the County Commission agree that we just fund theirs on the front end, they get their 1% after the bond debt hits, and then they're done for the entire referendum, and then it's just split between city and county. I'm comfortable in recommending to council that the percentage allocation is fair, considering historical trends. I think we're in agreement staff-wise on the language that needs to go into the intergovernmental agreement. We're going to mimic a lot of the language that was utilized in the T-Splosh intergovernmental agreement, which was negotiated relatively fast. So the question for council is going to be the prioritization of projects via the language that we actually write into the referendum. My preference and recommendation to the council would be that we be broad in the referendum description, and that the annualized capital priorities be set by the city council as part of the fiscal year budget. Meaning right now we're limited to a little bit of stormwater, sewer, and one specific project for the backwash tank for the filter plant. My preference would be broader language that gives the body more discretion on an annualized budget to plug gaps for capital improvements, depending on what happens within a given year. But that's completely up to y'all. If there are special projects that your constituents are pushing that you would like in the language, it could either be written in if the body agrees, or it could be earmarked and prioritized on one of the annual budget cycles during the 6 years of the referendum.
Yeah, 6 years if we all agree.
Right. So I think the way the sales tax work is it's either a 4 or a 5 year referendum, but the law, if you have an intergovernmental agreement, if you have an IGA between the county government and at least 50% of the municipal population, they'll give you a 6th year.
And Russell, part of the county's part in that is the Justice Center, of which there's going to be a bond issue.
That's my understanding. I don't know that they've confirmed or solidified that, but based on the projections, I think some of those assumptions were utilized in the revenue calculation.
Yeah, and that's what was presented at that last
Correct.
talk. So, I like your idea of making the language broad, because it leaves us, you don't know what's going to happen over the next 6 years, and it leaves us the ability to try to use that money.
So the political,
But it can only be for certain purposes.
it's got to be capital, and the statute provides what you can and cannot spend sales tax money. So we can't use it for general operations. In rare instances, you can pay employees, but mostly it's capital type projects that you have to spend the money. So the political question, when you make your decision, you put it on the ballot, is are people more willing to vote for a very specific project, or do they have the faith that we're going to prioritize those funds capitally based on a revolving world that changes year to year based on capital need? You try to figure out what the voters are going to support the most, whether they want it really specific or they want it very broad. From an administrative standpoint, I prefer very broad because we have a wide range of needs that comes up any given year. You know, this year, you know, we had to dump $200,000 in a dam reservoir out there at Lake Thomaston. We didn't foresee that, right? Had we foreseen that, that could have been an eligible sales tax project, but we had to pay for it, you know, out of the utility fund or the general fund, so we couldn't subsidize it with SPLOST dollars. Those are the type of things that pop up on a recurring basis where it would be good to have those capital dollars to fund.
And I think that's the way to explain it to people, because if you say water and sewer, then you're locked into how it has to be spent.
And what we did with the T-SPLOST is we basically verbatim copied the language in the statute. So if it was in the statute, we put it in the referendum. And I think it, you know, overwhelmingly received good support.
Make a motion that we accept this at 35% and then give you the parameters to do it on a very broad basis.
Well, and part of that'll be, you
Utilize
know,
it as we need it.
subject to the conversation
Right.
tomorrow. I just wanted
Sure.
council to be aware of my thoughts and
So we didn't really need to vote on nothing
Do we
tonight.
need-
I mean, it's we don't have a contract. I mean, if
I was
it's
subject to, of course.
I would second that, what Alan said, because I think that's the right way to go. And
We got a
Russell, you
motion.
don't have to identify the actual language for the referendum. It needs to be in by August, right? But you could do that in June,
correct.
or July.
Correct. And all of that language will be vetted by the city attorney and provided to council for your purview prior to execution. Because at some point, we're going to ask you to execute the intergovernmental agreement.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse.
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Head.
Yes.
All right, item number 4 for council's discussion clarification is the intent of the alcohol license more.
Sewer contract.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip one?
Yeah.
Okay, discussion of the city-county sewer contract. On the agenda, I have asked for council to set a work session. This is a very broad document that's taken multiple years to pull together and multiple attorneys working on it. Essentially what it does is it abolishes all of the old and antiquated sewer agreements between the city of Thomaston, Upson County, and the Industrial Development Authority. There was a 95 contract for the construction of the line out to the IDA. There was a subsequent 2003 contract for provision of services to the industrial park. I believe there was a 99 contract for the sewer line that heads up 19 towards DOT, and there was also a resolution thrown in there. This contract obliterates those old and sets forth new parameters to operate in the future. It provides funding both from the city and from the county that were based on construction estimates for the completion of a pipe that will move effluent off of our Bell Creek treatment facility and shift it over to Town Branch. The end result of the work that we are doing via USDA out at our plant at Headworks, clarifier transmission line, is the freeing up of 150,000 gallons of effluent capacity at residential strength, still under the permit requirements of the city as far as our industrial pretreatment process. But this capacity will be allocated and assignable by the Industrial Development Authority to go out and market future properties. In exchange for that, there's some provisions in here on how the funding will be split, what funding will be provided by unincorporated taxing, and funding that will be provided by unincorporated taxing. Because when we constructed the agreement, we wanted to ensure that the city wasn't paying twice, meaning the city writes a check for sewer, but we also fund the IDA. So if the IDA is paying for it, we're really paying for 36% of that. So there's some language in here about unincorporated, unincorporated. There's also a provision that for any new customers that tie on and utilize this capacity, and to mention this capacity is citywide, correct? For industrial and economic growth, so it's not necessarily tied to the industrial park, but there's a provision in the agreement that if any customer comes on as part of the 150,000 gallons, then the county would pay to the city the equivalent of 3 mills on the valuation of that particular property. In exchange, the city would agree to automatic fire protection aid for any of those entities that we were receiving the equivalent millage rate payment on. And the intent of the agreement when we started out was, well, let's just annex it in and we don't have to worry about it. Well, maybe we can't annex it, so how do we treat the property like it's in the city, but it's not in the city, so that you know, there's not issue of city versus county for industrial growth and prospect attract. So we decided on this revenue cost model whereby the county would pay the city an equivalent millage rate in exchange for marketable capacity to the industrial park. A lot of legal work went into it, a lot of engineering time. Deanne, are you tired of reading this contract?
I am.
She's tired of reading this contract. So that's a very macro level overview of the contract. And what I would like to do is maybe get an hour-long work session with City Council at some point to hammer through the provisions of this agreement. I would like to adopt and execute this agreement at the next council meeting. My understanding is the county is on board. They've reviewed it and they're ready to execute it in turn. And the reason I'm asking for a quick turnaround is one of the local industries has requested an increase on their effluent permit, right? We're permitted at X. City's position has been there is no more capacity outside of an agreement. There's been a value assigned to that capacity, and there's a provision in this agreement that in the event the project doesn't go forward, the city be remunerated for the cost of that capacity. In layman's terms, I don't want to tell this industry that the capacity is theirs until this contract is in.
What days were you thinking?
I didn't have a particular,
Okay.
y'all let me know, and we can try to facilitate.
Generally, we've tried Friday mornings. We believe 2 Fridays, either the 21st or the 28th.
That's Memorial Day, weekend, that's not gonna be.
One other component is that we're looking at an agreement, I've got to draft an agreement with the IDA.
Right.
That ties into this, and I've not started on that contract because we've been working on this one for almost a year, right?
Yeah, but I have met with the IDA board and asked them on the front end, if this industry, if the city were to grant this pending their execution of the agreement, would they be willing to allocate that effluent out of their 150,000 gallons? Meaning they don't get 150 plus this comes off their 150, and they unanimously agreed.
And Russell, would possibly any capital expenditures on that were the cities maybe coming to 2022 SPOS? Would that be part of it?
It could be, but most of the funding for the project, the city, we've already tightened that down. The city's portion on the transfer pipe, I believe a large majority of that cost has already been earmarked as fund balance at the IDA. There's a little bit of money that's going to come out of there, but yes, sales tax is an eligible. This would be a sales tax eligible project.
Okay.
This Friday, 2
So if we did, here's the problem, if we do it Friday, I've got an 11 o'clock meeting that I can't get out of. But I could, if we could do it earlier. And
You want to do 8 and have breakfast?
That work for everybody?
The 21st, this Friday.
This Friday. 8 a.m. this Friday.
And it's gonna be approximately.
I'm gonna hit the high points. I would invite you just to read the agreement between now and Friday. Make comments, and then I'm gonna hit the high points, and y'all ask me questions, and we'll try to knock it out and get everybody nodding their head. It's been vetted and vetted and vetted. Changed it like 3 times last week.
You said 8 o'clock Friday.
Yes, ma'am.
How long we anticipate it'll be?
An hour.
I have an appointment at 11:30. Okay.
They give us an hour or two if there's anything else. They should have some plate. So we'll do that.
Is that good?
Yep.
All right, next item for council's discussion clarification is the intent of the alcohol license moratorium. We're currently under moratorium. The question has come up whether council's intent was to prevent all permits and licensure associated with new alcohol license as it pertains to convenience stores, or whether or not the prohibition of issuing new licenses was tied to new facilities being constructed. And I'll give you an example. If Lonnie owns a liquor store and he wants to sell that liquor store to Mike, Lonnie has a license, his license is non-transferable. The way I interpret the moratorium is I can't grant any new licenses. So if Lonnie sells his store to Mike, Mike can't get a license. So that's one way to interpret the moratorium. That is the way the county is interpreting the moratorium, and that is what they are practicing. The other interpretation would be that if Lonnie owns a liquor store and he sells it and Mike buys it, Mike can be issued an alcohol license because the moratorium is trying to protect the status quo, meaning we don't want more convenience stores, but we're going to allow the ones that exist to continue to exist in perpetuity, even if it means the transfer of licenses.
That's how I understood it.
Well, that's the purpose for the conversation, because the county was applying the standard the same way I have been applying the standard. There's a situation that has arose where there's a potential sale and the purchaser is requesting clarification for licensure purposes since we're under the moratorium. So what I need to know from council, can I and staff issue those licenses and permits as long as they pertain to a current convenience store? And would that inclusion also allow building permits for that particular convenience store if it is currently in existence?
Question, are we talking about transferring from, are you hypothetical from Mike, from Lonnie to Mike, or what, from Lonnie to Lonnie's brother, or Lonnie to Lonnie's wife? Are you considering that in a transfer?
I don't think we can take that into consideration because each license is non-transferable. So for our purpose, it wouldn't matter if he's transferring it to his brother or to Mike, or maybe he's not even selling it. Maybe he don't want it in his name. Maybe he's going to put it in JD's name and 2 months later it's going to be in Jeff's name. As long as it's the same business, are we okay with that? Or are we saying, we're not granting any new license? You've got it, you're grandfathered in, you can't transfer it, no more doing it.
Russell, you know, the tough thing about that is somebody, and I can understand reasons that you might want to prevent that, but somebody owns a business that he hopes to provide for his family, but at some point, he's going to want to sell that.
That's right.
And you've greatly changed the value of that business.
Just till November.
What do you mean till November?
Moratorium
expired.
What if Lonnie has the license, underage sale, he's now lost his license for 30 days. Well, Mike just bought it because of that. Now, does that 30-day suspension follow? So in
that's a new
essence,
license.
So let's say I own a gas station, I got the license. I sell underage, you revoke me for 30 days. I, the next day, put the license as his name. We've done nothing.
So you're saying if there's a place and there's a license, the license would automatically be transferred to the new?
I'm saying there's no prohibition. You still have to pay for it, right? You
There's
gotta,
vetting, there's a vetting.
Yeah, you got a background check, you
Yeah,
got to
there's a
do that.
vetting
New
process,
person
not
does.
automatic.
the methodology could be used to circumvent punitive damages.
It,
But that was my concern, as far as a license, you normally go and apply for a license, you do your background check and all such as that. So if we're not doing all that, we're just transferring a license, then I would.
We do background checks on everybody gets
Yeah,
fingerprints.
So
process
even
has
though
changed.
it's transferable, you would.
It's a
still
new
go back-
license. It's a new process, it's a new application, new fingerprints, new everything.
what we have seen historically in the finance department is we get these convenience stores 3 or 4 times a year sometimes do this. I've always assumed it was some issue at the state level, a lottery thing or an issue. You know, I've not seen anything since the alcohol thing come, but I can just say, historically, if you go back and look, almost all of them in town is all of a sudden it's in somebody else's
Well,
name.
some are gonna own the business, and they're gonna lease these stores out
Yeah,
to,
right.
you know, John Doe. And then I would assume at that point, is it the current owner or is it John Doe who gets the license?
Whoever applies.
You know, whoever comes in to apply for it.
So I mean, if it's the same vetting and you're not adding a new license to the roll, explain to me how they're getting around, you said,
Let's say
punitive damages.
Let's say you hold the license
Okay,
and your clerk sells to Lonnie's kid.
okay,
And you get a citation and you come before the council and we suspend your license for 30 days.
okay.
The same day you turn your license in, he applies for that license at the same location, he can sell alcohol.
Well, I think you just have to wait until, if that happens, you'd have to wait until that, whatever sentence was served before you're gonna be able to transfer that license.
The license isn't tied to the location, it's tied to the person.
Well, can we legally tie it to do that?
I don't know that you can. I have to look at that and see. We haven't had that come up with the
It may not, it
suspensions
may
that we
not.
had. We didn't have that come
I
up.
mean, I
I
think
think,
we build
like
it,
Ryan, I think maybe tied to the location.
or somehow that there can be no, if it's, you know, 123 Millrace Road, you know, C-store there, and, you know, that happens, I shouldn't be able to
Yeah,
then
but you're-
transfer that out.
But you're coming in as a new owner saying, why am I being
Well, I didn't
penalized
do
for
that.
something I didn't do?
I mean, I think that
Gotta wait till
that
the
license is in
location
limbo.
goes suspension.
Yeah.
Why? So that would be an ordinance modification, even if it's legally practical to tie it to location.
I'm not sure.
I
that
don't
you
see
can
you
tie
tied
it
to location, but I think but that particular license is being, you know, transferred, for lack of a better term, right? I mean,
Well, they're non-transferable, so it's not it's a new application.
But on the application, do they say where they're gonna be conducting business? Yeah, I just don't
But
see
I
how
don't know
you.
that I have any legal recourse.
Your,
to administer
your
that.
suspension is to that person that owns the license, like with the suspension hearings, it's to the person that owns the license. And so they're the ones that are reprimanded, and that reprimand goes to them, and if they don't own the store, they can't be, you know, they don't have a license, it's suspended at that point.
I think before I could then make a logical part of the decision on it, I would like to know what our options are as far as that's concerned, because I certainly wouldn't want to do it in circumvention of a
Yeah, my
I'm
concern-
not saying there would be.
Well, but that's a
I'm
good
saying
question.
it opens the avenue where
there's gotta be some way to prevent that.
Well, my concern is that someone's gonna use this to circumvent the law. They're gonna transfer the title from themselves to a family member or friend or whatnot and maintain business until they're out from under that penalty. And that's my concern here. Why not? You know, the timing is suspicious.
Well, I'm not. This has to do with the sale. That was a analogy I used.
Well, I think that's two different scenarios. If
Right.
if it's an arm's length transaction and they're selling the business, assuming there's no issue and they pass the vetting process.
But I'm saying the process works. It's either we can issue it or we can't. I just need to know if
The
it's tied
county's
to.
not doing
And
it.
the question is, under the moratorium, not after the moratorium. We'll
Right.
look at that later, but under the moratorium,
Hold on,
was that
let me get
meant
back.
to keep things status quo?
Well, that's two different, I don't know, because to me, that's two different scenarios. I mean,
Status quo structure or status quo number of license?
Well, I mean, you can't answer one without the other in my mind.
Sure you can.
How?
I can have the same number of licenses and have multiple I can have the same number of structures and plenty of licenses. All of them can change 20 times. I still got the same number of structures. The other way is I'm just preventing structures from growing.
Right, but my point is, I don't want to allow persons, not structure, to be able to transfer a license if in a circumvention of the law. And if that means, I guess the answer to your question is, I think they would have to know what we can do before I can make that determination.
Yeah, there's just not that level of discretion for staff in the administration of granting a license. It's basically, is it in the city? Are you 21? Can you pass a criminal background check? Does your fingerprints check out? If all that's right, you sign your check, here's your license.
The criteria is already in the ordinances, and that's in place. So really what we're talking about is while this isn't the
Yeah,
report.
I don't know if we can legislate intent. Like the intent of the individual either dropping a license or applying for
But
one.
would you want to question the intent, or at least know what's going on, if you know that the one on 123 Mill Race just got busted for
If
selling
y'all
to a
tell
minor?
me that I can do that, then I'll do that. She's not gonna let me though.
But as far as the moratorium is concerned, I still think that without understanding what we can and can't do, I mean, those are,
Can we tack that
Huge.
on to the work session?
Yeah.
And we'll fit them both in with our,
I don't know of any incident like we're talking about with this go around that's happened with the alcohol, but it is my knowledge that when the spin machine got busted, that did occur.
Absolutely.
That they transferred into other family members.
Immediately.
So they could get those machines.
well, you can't do that now because it's the way I thought it's regulated now. That license follows, you have to get approved for it's a much more stringent than coming in.
That
It's not
could be,
like our
but I think
process.
when we did that a couple of years ago, I think there was a lot of transferring of.
But I think since that one that happened, maybe not a couple of years, but the one that was 5 or 6 years ago, I think before you got here, I think that was before the lottery really kind of took it over, yeah,
It could be.
with those licenses.
All right, so we have, I guess this is just discussions, you don't need a
Yes,
motion.
we're gonna make it a part of it.
We'll make this a part of Friday's discussions with.
So Friday's meeting's probably gonna be more like an
2
hour
hours.
and a half.
We ain't got through this 2 hours. Bring your lunch.
Yeah, that's something 11:30.
we good on that one?
We're good on that one.
All right, so the next item for council's consideration is authorization to adopt ordinance for city charges, the buyback provision for solar customers. You should have received a copy of the proposed ordinance with your packet. Hold on, I'll tell you what the number is.
G5.
G5 regarding 90-151 in reference to 90-153. So currently, the state law provides that if someone installs solar panels, then they can sell that back to the city as part onto our grid. The city is allowed to provide certain charges for that, right? Metering cost, anything associated with it. So we used to bill customers, we only have one, in accordance with section 90-151, which was tied to the wholesale cost of city power averaged over 12 months. The city changed its electric fee scale in 2017, and we provided for an avoided energy cost that could be billed. Staff's recommendation is to reference the avoided energy cost, specifically section 153, as the payment mechanism in section 90-151. So what we're trying to recapture is the avoided energy cost. And the scenario that I was given when asked how that worked is, let's say the city has to buy generation from somewhere. Nuclear power plants running, hydroelectricity is running, all that's running. And we're buying that power for our system. Well, we don't know your solar, whether you're going to be buying or selling that day, so we have to have that in reserve. So if I buy generation for a customer and then they're selling to me, The avoided energy cost is what I had to purchase for their particular use. So by charging them the avoided energy costs, I'm not trying to buy from them and eat what I have to buy on the wholesale market. So the one customer that we had would continue to be billed under 9151. Any subsequent customers moving forward would be billed based on the avoided energy cost as is laid out in 9153. So staff's recommendation is for council to authorize that change and authorize the mayor's execution.
Heard that recommendation, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse?
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yeah.
Next item for council's consideration is authorization to execute and purchase a new financial software suite. I'm going to defer to the city finance director, Mr. Joyce, facilitated the procurement negotiation and reference check on the providers that submitted.
You want to move this to the work session Friday? All right, so, in the budget this year, we put $190,000 in for new software. We had kind of discussed, we had some billing issues last year with some of our larger clients because our current financial software won't handle some of these big demand meters like for the hospital and for DART. It was quite embarrassing when we had to go and sit with them and tell them that we had underbilled them by a number of dollars. We're relying on ECG to make those calculations every month, which is a human error in there, and then we're manually entering into the system. So we decided to go down this route. So was in contact with ECG, with Cho, that y'all all met before multiple times. I put out an RFP that lasted, I think I wrote all this up for you, it was about 20-something days. I got the listing, I think everybody has this listing with the highlighted ones. So these are the ones that kind of came back to me. I sent this list to Cho and said, who does billing in Georgia now that you feel comfortable with? And he said, well, the only two on the list are BS&A and Tyler. I did demo the AdComp company as well because they are based out of Atlanta, but they are clearly a company that focuses more on the credit card fees and collecting the money, and then just kind of added the financial suite to it. So they really, you can even see in some of their pricing was 50 cents per utility bill, $10 per employee. It was kind of an online thing, and they really weren't in the same class with the other two systems. So looking at the two price structures in this, these were the original quotes we got on this piece of paper. So BS&A came in at $214,000 and Tyler was $171,000. So let's talk about the two companies real quick. So Tyler is kind of the big fish. So there are hundreds and hundreds of software companies doing financial software for governments in the U.S. It's the most diverse industry I've ever seen as an accountant. I mean, there just usually isn't, but Tyler is probably the biggest one. Have about 10,000 cities or something that they're in. BS&A has about 2,000. So I went through this. So when I got to looking and really got to digging into it, the BS&A includes a $25,000 contingency, which Tyler did not include, and they include $27,000 of travel. They will put somebody here for 46 days during the implementation and complete training, and they work with these, with my staff all the way through. So those weren't in there. So when you take that out, then BS&A was back $162,000 and were cheaper. Tyler was, everything was remote, and then anything else that you wanted was added on. The big selling point for me, which is why a couple of things that I went back to BS&A, was it was a 6-month implementation time. Tyler's is 18 months. And I just didn't feel like we had 18 months to wait. They're going to come in, we're going to do it over a few months, and we're going to get it done. So based on, when I compared apples to apples, BS&A was cheaper. When I called BS&A and said, hey, give me a proposal, which I think is the final one you guys got, give me the proposal with those out. He left the travel in, but he did knock about another $6,000 off. So came in at like $183 even including that travel. And then going forward, we're saving about $16,000 a year in annual support. So over the 5-year plan, we're talking about a savings of $50,000 or $60,000 if we said we use this for 5 years.
And your folks and Cho.
Yeah, so I called Cho, he's fine. I demoed both softwares. frankly, I was blown away with the BSNA. It's a little bit different than I've ever seen. It really, to me, looks like you're working in Excel. Everything is transferable, very easy to add graphs, the reporting function. It's just different. Tyler looked very similar to what we're using now, but I just really like the BSNA product. I've done a bunch of research on the company. They're based out of Michigan. They're in one building. They have 170 employees in one building. They don't sell to anybody that's not either in the Eastern or Central time zone because they want the support for you to be there, so there's no waiting. They don't have voicemail there, and they don't have automated phones. When you call, you get somebody on the phone and they help you.
That's important.
Yeah, and that was super important to me because the problem, if I got Dina trying to process payroll that morning and y'all come and decide checks at 10:30, I can't wait for somebody to get to Utah like we're doing now for 3 hours and this kind of thing. I really like the fact that they were adamant about the training, and no, we need to have somebody here. You're going to see that. I like the whole process. The salesperson was doing a demo personally in Americus this week, and he was in Augusta. He came by to meet with me in Americus, and so I really, I was kind of blown away with them. For that price, we get unlimited users. They have a 1-year risk reversal, is what they call it. So if within a year we don't like it, we get our money back. Now, I don't know if you go through that conversion process, but again, we get our money back. They are partnered. I brought to you, I think I brought it here, but I know Russell and I had talked about it. We were talking about switching credit card companies. It was way more user-friendly for our customers. It was cheaper. It had the graphs, everything we wanted. That's one of their big partners. It's called Invoice Cloud. We'll be able to collect more stuff online. That's one of their big partners. Been around since 1987, not owned by some big, huge company. That was one of Russell and I when we started looking at it. So I called references today. I called about 8 different cities all over the U.S. I spoke with, it's funny, you get folks our size or lower, you can get them on the phone. You call Peachtree City, I'm still waiting on messages. But you can get, Adairsville's been on it 2 years. Then I talked to Commerce, which is one of Trey's cities that he deals with. I talked to the city clerk. They've been on it about 8 years, and they love it. She said they just had never even thought about changing. And then I got a hold of the finance director in Royston, Georgia, and they just made the conversion in November, and it was fine. And what I liked about what she said was, look, we had one issue. She said in our garbage billing, we bill in 3 different counties, which are 3 different sales tax rates. So she said the problem was getting all that set up, and they were able to go in there and build it. So to me, with our demand stuff, so based on what Joe said, based on comparing apples to apples, it was cheaper. Based on the 5-year plan, it's going to be cheaper.
And the implementation schedule.
The implementation schedule's faster. I liked it. I let 2 of my staff, who I didn't talk to, demo both pieces of software. They spent 3 or 4 hours with each one. They came back with the same recommendation and said, this is what we like this one. They've never had a city get rid of their software. Not one ever. So when you have 1,000 clients and nobody's ever fired you, that to me says a lot. So I like them. Like I said, they've come to visit, seem to be great. Now what I haven't done is if you were to vote tonight, they're ready for us to sign something, but that needs to go to the end. I mean, I would ask you to just give Russell the authority or the mayor to sign it, but it needs to be looked at, legally. So
What's the downside?
The downside, Don, is I had really hoped that I could work something out with Cassell, because getting people that have worked in this city for 20 years and on a piece of software for 10 years to change is going to be a challenge. Don't get me wrong. It's not for me. I mean, I know how software works. I mean, it's, when I was at Auburn, that was one of the things we had to do in the masters. We built our own in Microsoft Access every module. So, Russell asked me when I came here, have you ever worked on Cassell? It doesn't matter. I know what they do. I can work on any accounting software, but it'll be difficult for them. Having somebody here looking over your shoulder for 6 weeks, 7 weeks of training, that getting on that schedule. We're now at a point with everything going on, and it took me a little while to get this going, that now I'm looking at implementing maybe November or December if I'm trying to put this in, which gets into year end. Those to me are the downside of it. But I think the upsides way outweigh that. I think having the utility billing where we know it's accurate and the system does it. I really hope that, one of the things y'all requested is it takes me 3 hours to print financials now once I get it done. And if it prints right, if not, I gotta print it again. And then I turn around and re-enter it into a format that Ryan asked for, that it does make more sense, that it's 2 months to 2 months, right? Our software doesn't print that. And I really think with this being more of like a Microsoft-based product, Russell really, Russell sees the financials every month. He and I talk every day, spend a lot of time together. But there are reports that Russell wants to see every day that I don't have time to generate out of my system, but I can build that in hopes that he can hit a button and it refreshes every day.
Yeah, this
and
is
he gets
overdue.
Long overdue.
Because
Yeah, absolutely.
out of the game, and they're not gonna.
Yeah, and I thought it was odd that Cassell, which I talked to them and I even put it out, they've never called me. I mean, I didn't even pick up the phone to call me and ask me about what we were doing, or even didn't put a bid in or anything. So I think it's ready, it's time, but I'm actually pretty excited about it because I'm kind of a nerd. I like this kind of stuff, and I like what we can do with it, and the report writing and reporting function to me would be pretty neat. There's even one of the cities mentioned a huge work order system that we don't use, but I'm having a tough time now that we outsourced everything to Brian, and they use a work order system, but my ladies really don't access it, so maybe we get into some of that stuff. There's online things, there are ways to set up employee modules that they can log in and get their own. We have them 2 or 3 times a month. Well, they need another pay stub, or they need a W-2. All of that stuff, if we can automate it. So I'm like I said, I've been impressed with them so far. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a few hang-ups, but they acted like we do it. We get with it, sign it. Within a few weeks, I'll have a phone call with them. They'll get our database of Cassell, and then they'll convert that first before they ever get started implementing. They'll convert 10 years of our old data. It'll be in the new system. So that'll be there. And then they'll run both systems concurrently for a while to make sure payroll's right, make sure everything's correct, and then we make the switch over.
I mean, this is turnkey. I know you said we took out the contingency.
He said the contingency, so ask him 2 things. The contingency, he said, look, I'd like for you to kind of plan on that, which I still think over the 5 years, if you consider this a long-term asset, we're still good. He says that's mostly for people who always want custom reports and stuff that may cost you something later. The other thing that I ask him is, I get my utility billing takes a month, because that process for utility, for Sandy's doing certain things the first week, and then you bill the last week. But there's just no way you could spend time with Carol, Dina, and Jessica that you're going to have to teach them for a month. So what I asked him was, could I either get money back if we don't use it, if those people don't have to be here, or could I let him send those people back at year end, which is very hectic for them when they're trying to close the year end out, and he said either one. So very easy to work with, through the process, and so
The last thing I want is him to get you sucked into this thing, and then there's a bunch of overage costs.
That's right. Well, it's funny you say that, because the one thing when I was reading, went back through it again today, it said, we're one of the only providers that don't charge you support the first year. The support doesn't start till the second year. And so it's like, so I go back to Tyler, I didn't even put that in here, and Tyler doesn't really spell it out, but they don't say no either. Yeah. So they might be the 171 plus the 28 the first year. But I didn't even notice that until BS&A actually made the reference, like you don't pay support to the start of the second year. So, again, they kind of said all the right things. I mean, I get it. You're a big company. They got salespeople hired. But, talking to Commerce, been on it 7 or 8 years, talking to some of these. I really wanted to talk to Peachtree City and the Peachtree City Water and Sewer Authority, because they both switched from Tyler to BS&A in the last 2 or 3 years. And so I was trying to get feedback from them, and they may still call me tomorrow, but my thing was, why did you switch? What do you like better? That's who I was, and that's why I called one lady in Minnesota, one in Illinois, and a guy in Florida that they had the names. They gave me every client they have in the U.S. and every name I could just call. And so everybody that had switched from Tyler, I put a phone call in, but I hadn't, heard back from them yet.
What protection do we have from being hacked, like ransomware or whatnot?
Yeah, I think that we turn over more toward the IT side.
So the general rule is you do have some firewall protections, but my understanding is if they want to hack you, you're going to get hacked. Our protection comes in the off-site,
right,
cloud-based backup. So we're backed up on site, but if our data were ever compromised, we can cut it off. They spin up those servers in the cloud, and within a matter of hours, we're back running. So it's about protection of the assets and continuity of operation versus everything being encrypted and we be completely shut down and have to rebuild from scratch. We do carry liability insurance through our insurance carrier for cyber issues. I think we got up to $500,000 on that. So we mitigate it by safety protocol via our IT staff and how they protect the network. But we go a step farther with the cloud backup in the event we did have to restart if we.
And that's money y'all have spent in the last 2 years. We've drastically updated all the servers and all the communication, everything since Russell and I got here. So we've been kind of behind the scenes working on.
Be involved in the
Yes.
segment, let them.
Yeah,
review
so
how
that's the
things
first
sit
call.
on the
He
server.
said, he said, we'll have to get your IT on the phone because we've talked about, they will have a hosted version. They don't have it done yet, but we went back and forth, but we've got pretty much a brand new server anyways. So the first one we kind of wanted to put on our server where we own this.
I was gonna ask you to sit on our server.
Yeah, this will be on our server. This is a license for our server, and then going forward. But Ryan and I have tried to read everything in the world about hidden costs and things, and I couldn't. I asked Royston, they said no. They just implemented and they seem fine. So yeah.
Based on your recommendation and assuming all the contracts work out with DN and satisfactory review with IT and everything, I'll make a motion that we move forward with BSNA.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Miller?
Aye.
Greathouse? Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
The next.
Which one is in?
The next item for council's discussion is authorization to dispose of surplus items. This is specifically in regards to the 16-2 conference table, 1 round table, 1 square smaller table, 13 conference
Motion
room
to approve.
chairs.
I think there's a motion to give them to Miss Lakeitha.
The prisoners disassembled that stuff. If we were gonna auction it, and I said, man, you need to come look.
Russell said, "What do you want to ask? $300 a day?" I said, "Get in the truck. Let's go." We got up there and looked at it. And Russell said, "Well, this isn't worth anything."
Yeah, torch it.
All right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So I hear a motion in a second.
I'm gonna second that motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote for this.
Councilmember Greathouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
Next item for council discussion is just general description of 4th of July / Freedom Fest event. July 4th, 7 to 10, we've got a band booked and we're gonna blow up a whole bunch of fireworks at dark. We'll be meeting with staff as far as security personnel. It's my intention not to have vendors this year in that we do not currently have a Main Street coordinator. However, I don't have the staff to manage and co-locate vendors right now. And I think last year's event just with a band and the fireworks was sufficient. We do want to do more as we head into 22. So just wanted council to understand we're still moving on with 4th of July. We won't have vendors, but we're probably going to have some giveaways, maybe some popcorn and or popsicles and ice cream that the city normally does, but no vendors. So save the date, July 4th, 7 to 10.
Speaking of Main Street coordinator, are we looking at hiring one?
Yes, we have solicited resumes. We actually have interviews tomorrow. So
Good. We need to get that going back again.
Yes.
Main Street's important.
So I've kind of rewritten the job description, and it's not only Main Street. I've incorporated all DDA assignments, all HPC, Historic Preservation Commission assignments, and all Main Street assignments, as well as general economic development events citywide to partner in conjunction with the IDA. So new face, new person, interviews tomorrow. Last item for council's consideration is to reassign the second meeting date in June from June 15th until June the 29th. Council has traditionally canceled the July 4th meeting, and the reasoning is somewhat personal satisfying in that I am going to be on vacation for the second meeting in June. However, if council were to relocate that meeting from the 15th to the 29th, I would be able to make both meetings in June.
Then there won't be such a big gap between meetings, too.
We have an annexation that's on the table
This on the
that
15th.
we have set.
Called meeting for the 15th.
We are scheduled to go June 15th, but
I can handle that one. We can also do anything we need to do without Russell here.
So
It's up to council.
So I guess we can move the regular meeting to the 29th, and on the 15th, if we could just come, we would just have the annexation part and just boom.
if
Is
everybody,
this kind of,
we'll do that.
it's kind of,
It's up to council.
it's kind of to the front of it anyway, so that we
If you
can.
want to have a meeting and you give me grace to be excused on the 15th, and I could try to provide staff whatever support in my absence, or if you'd prefer me here and want to move it to the 29th, we can do that too.
Now, I have not sent the notice to the paper for that yet, so, but we had talked to Mr. Fallon about the 15th. I'm not sure that he would mind if it were moved from the 15th to the 29th.
And I can reach out to him. I
You do it earlier?
don't think he would. He doesn't seem to be in a huge rush, but we have scheduled the Joint Planning Commission and Zoning Commission meetings already.
I mean, could his be earlier, or the other meeting, or is it's got to be, can't be earlier than the 15th? Could you do the first meeting?
We have to provide at least 15 days notice ahead of time. That's going to be June 1st. And today's 18th, so it wouldn't be in the
Okay.
paper in time.
What do y'all think?
Whatever y'all want with the group wants to do.
Come in, you know, if he's, I guess we ask him if he's okay with it being on the 29th. If not, just come do the quick 15-minute meeting
I agree.
with that.
It's not complicated. It's not going to be a complicated
Okay.
issue, so I'd say do that, see if he can move 29th. If not, we'll just move on the 15th. Russell will have whoever he needs to be here that's fine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So do we need to have a motion to do that? Or?
It might make it clean if
I'll
we,
make-
I think
I'll
to
make a
amend the
motion.
regular meeting, you do.
I'll make the motion to do that.
we got a motion to move the regular June 15th meeting to the 29th, but may or may not have a special call meeting on the 15th. And then we will cancel the July 6th meeting. So we got a motion, do I hear a second?
No second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Baker?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Net?
Yes.
Yeah.
Want to sit me out?
Yeah, I think so.
So we have a meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock,
Yes. Joint
It's
meeting.
the,
It's the joint meeting at the
senior center,
senior center.
5 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, any other business? Anybody have any other business?
I was gonna ask you about the Braille tickets, how we doing on Braille ticket for Thompson Night?
Thompson night is Saturday, 4 o'clock start. We've got tickets available till Friday here. We gave away tickets for the ones playing ball and sports, and also we reached out and offered the city employees as well as any council member, anybody but our attorney can't have them, but anybody else can have 2 free tickets for Saturday. We hope we have a good crowd. So just check with that. And then I believe there's a local travel company that's actually taking a bus. So I think Mims Travel is doing bus for people that don't want to drive. Old people like Jeff that don't want to drive to Atlanta on Saturday. But it's at 4 o'clock Saturday, so I hope we'll have a good crowd for that. Executive, we do have an executive session, a brief executive session for personnel. If I can get a motion to go into executive session for
Second.
personnel. Motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Grayhouse?
All right.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
dad's out sick, so
Oh.
I'm sure he'll call you tomorrow. He said that he's happy to stop by.
You gotta do it.
All right, we're
You
live.
download Microsoft.
Do we need to go see this?
I missed it. I got an email.
I just forgot.
I sent an email, brought it up here to my phone.
We went to the same thing. That Outlook. Yeah.
All right, we're back in regular session. If nothing else, do I hear a motion to
I'll
adjourn?
make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Man, he didn't even have time to make